Hello everyone, we are back here with a new video, and if you remember in our last video we saw that how to create failover cluster for a named instance, and that was our end of SQL failover cluster. But suppose if in some scenarios if you want to install named instance, as I told, we have to do the similar way what we did for our default instance. If you have not watched that series, you can scroll up and you can watch that series. So this is optional video which I am making on the SQL failover cluster on a named instance. If you remember, this is our video. So in our last video, we saw that if we make a failover cluster for two of this node, then what will happen, and also we tested this whether it is working or not. Now the next agenda of this video is to make these two nodes part of failover cluster on a named instance. We'll see that in a minute and how it works, and we'll also test out the failover cluster for SQL failover cluster by manually turning off or switching off. Okay, let's go back to my domain, the SQL the node one. So as you remember, I have created this. Let me minimize this, and I will, as I told, I'm going to install one more instance which is named instance, and that I will do it on my SQLB node. Okay, so let me minimize this, let me close this, let me open the SQL setup file. I mean to say the ISO file. If you have not done it, please copy that file so that we can install in this SQLB as a named instance, and then add that particular SQLAB FCI node to this failover cluster, which is listening on named instance. Okay, let me open the setup file. Let's hit setup file and hit install. The setup has come here. Let's click on installation, and as you can see, new SQL failover cluster installation, and this will be our new failover on a named instance. That is the reason I'm creating new. But as I told, if you want to add this node as well as a part of our existing failover cluster, SQL failover cluster, you can do that as well. But as I told, this is lab scenario, and I'm going to show you for named instance and default instance, which already we saw, and then later for SSAS as well. If time permits in future, I will create a SQL SSAS cluster, which generally people will use. Even will make video on that as well. Let's select the edition. It is our developer edition. Let me maximize this so that we have enough room. Okay, agree terms and conditions, license. Once this is done, we can skip the update and let this particular thing complete. And also we have to create data disk, as I told in our last video, that we have three different volume. We can directly install in that, but since it is lab scenario, I'm going to create multiple folders. So for our SQL A failover cluster, SQL ADB failover cluster, we have created one folder. Now for this named instance, we are going to create one more. We'll see that within a minute. Okay, so all the checks has been completed. If there is any error, please correct that. If not, you can't hit next. Let me hit next, and then database engine, and hit next. Once this is done, and currently if you remember in our last video, the default one, we have created this. That is the reason the default name was MS SQL Server. And if you watch that video back and open the configuration manager, you can find this particular thing. But as I told, this is the name instance. So what I will do is SQLB, and as you told, SQLB DB, and then I will put it named instance. Okay, so that we have better understanding. So the named instance installation will be SQL BNI, which is SQLB and named instance. And this I will leave it, the SQL server name, cluster name, sorry, the network name. I will leave it as SQL BDB, or you can put whatever you need. But in my case, I'm just going to put SQL BDB. This is not the standard way how to name this SQL Server network name, but as I told, this is lab scenario. I will be installing multiple SQL Server clusters. So that is the reason I want to make sure what I have done within a glance. That is the reason I'm putting this here. But you can rename whatever you want. But the main thing which we did here is which is different from our previous installation. That is named instance. So SQL B named instance, and this is our SQL B DB. So whenever we are trying to connect to this failover cluster, SQL failover cluster, we are going to use this network name. But there is a twist which we'll talk about that once the installation is complete. Okay, let me hit next. Once this is done, hit next. There is nothing to do much here. As you can see, let me select all the three drives. Similar to our previous installation, there is no different, as I told, apart from one thing. Let me check this. Sorry, sorry about that. So IPv4, and let me give one IP, and the IP should be in same subnet, I mean to say. And previously I have given 50, and this time I will give 52. Okay, or 51. Okay, So 51 is done, and it is part of our same subnet. As you can see, hit next. Then cluster configuration. So as I told, we have to give one SQL agent and SQL service account. Otherwise you can't install that. So let me give the SQL agent account and SQL service database account, service account, sorry. So it is SQL service. Once this is done, you can check this box or you can just leave it. It doesn't matter as per this moment. But you can check, click here to see the more details about it. Okay, so I will hit next. Once this is done, then we have to create authentication mix mode. So I explained you in my previous video why I am doing this. Let me quickly give the password and add current user, then my DBA group. Okay, DB admins, it is done. Now data directories, temp and the max DOP, memory, file stream. I have spoke all about this in our previous video. So you can just watch those video or you can see our article as well about all these things, how to configure. But as you remember, in our last video, we have configured for volume one, and again it is pointing there, which I don't want. So what I'll do is, let me go back to the cluster disk, which is cluster storage, volume one, volume two, volume three, data, log and temp. Okay, if you remember. Now if you see, this is for our first instance, the default instance. Okay, that is the reason it is here. Now I have to create one more folder, okay, so that I can install my SQL in this particular folder. Okay, so it is sqlb db, and let me put this, let me go back, and volume 2 we have log. Let me paste this and rename this to log. Once this is done, let me go back, log SQL DB, then we have third, and this is our temp SQL BDB. Okay, let me click here, and as I told, this is going to be our installation volume 1 and SQL BDB. Let me copy this path and go back to here, and here I will paste that path. Okay, so once you do this, it will automatically change everything. As you can see, SQL BDB, our database directory got changed. In volume 1 we have SQL DB. Then log files, for log we have created separate one, so let me get the logs one as well. Let me go back here, volume 1, I think so. Volume 2 is our log. Yeah, volume 2 is our log, SQL BDB. Let me copy this, then go here, and here I will remove this particular, this thing, SQL cluster, and I will put this. Okay, so now we have changed to log db, yeah, SQL BDB. We have changed our log directory here, SQL BDB Microsoft, and it will install on this location. Okay, this thing is done. Okay, and then we have temp drive, temp db. I have spoke about this. So number of files is based on your logical processor what you have. So currently it is 4 in my case. It depends. I've shown you the document as well, so you can just check out this document of mine where I have guided you with all the information on how to do that. If I go to my SQL failover cluster installation, and if you scroll a bit down, you will find multiple documents on how to configure this max DOP and file stream and all those things. As you can see here in this below document, data directories, after the data directories you will find this temp db, max dop, memory and file stream. What are these and how to use this? File stream, you will not be using this. Okay, probably in future I'll make a different article or video on this. We'll talk about that later, but currently data directory, temp and dop we are going to use. So you can watch this particular document or you can read this, you will get the idea on how to use this, or you can watch our previous video. Okay, I don't want to, again explain the same thing to you people. The video will take longer. That is the reason. So I'll leave it default, and data directory is here. So this is our, temp DB. So I'm going to change this. Let me remove and browser location where my cluster disks are present. Your cluster storage, and as you remember, volume 3 is our for temp and sqlb. So I will select this, and as you can see, our temp db folder is ready now. I'll leave everything default. Okay, I spoke about this earlier videos, you can check that. Let's click on max dop. On max dop is also 4. It is also depends on Numa node. So as you can see, I have 4 virtual coolers, so it automatically took that. I will leave this as a default one. If you want to see more about this, you can click on this configure the max degree of parallelism server configuration. You can check out this document, but I have explained to you about this in our previous video. You can watch that. So memory configuration also I have spoke earlier, so you can check this. So by default, if you leave it default, it is going to utilize the complete memory. And if you not the complete, there is an article, you can read that there is certain amount which is going to be used. But the recommendation what you will do is, suppose if you are using this VM for multiple things, okay, not only SQL, you have installed other services as well, then you can specify the minimum and maximum memory to be utilized by this particular server. So in my case, my VM memory is 4 GB, so I'm going to use 0 to 248, like 2 GB. But you can click this particular document, server memory configuration. Let me click this, and you will find certain things. You can read that, and based on that you can configure. But in my case, as I told, that I am going to use the less memory like a recommendation, because this is lab scenario, and I don't want to use the complete memory, because I will be installing other services as well on this machine. Okay, once this is done, click here to accept the recommendation memory, and file stream we are not going to use. Let us cross check and everything about this. Okay, and temp data directory, everything looks good. Volume 2 log db, perfect. We'll hit next. Once this is done, the installation will start. So what you have to do is, you have to click on install, and once the installation is complete, I will show you how to connect. Meanwhile, let me check if SSMS is installed or not in this machine. I think so, it is not installed. Let me install the SSMS as well. And once the both installation is done, then I will come back here and I will show you how this works, the named instance. Okay, let me install this as well. We are back and the installation is complete. Let me close this. The SQL installation has been completed, and let's open SSMS and try to connect to this SQL Server instance which we have installed. Now you will notice one thing here. Earlier, what happens is, when we try to connect to the network instance, we were directly putting the network name, cluster network name. But as you can see, by default it took slash and SQL BNI. So this is the beauty of this named instance. Now it has a lot of advantage. What does it means, so most of the organization, what they will do is, they will install the SQL, and they want to separate this particular name. This Now suppose if the cluster name is there, on the same cluster name they want to have multiple instances, like they want to have SSAS, they want to have SQL, they want to have SQL, one more SQL, then this thing will come into picture. And this is really one of the best feature which you can look at it. Okay, so this is the part which I was talking about. And if I do this trust server certificate and connect, you will see that it got connected to this particular instance. Okay, but as I told, this sqlbi is our cluster name, and this sqlbi is our named instance. That is the reason, to connect to named instance, we will always put slash sqlbi. I mean to say the name which you have put. Let me open SQL failover cluster and give an example. So if you saw in our default cluster, the default instance, you can see that it was MS SQL Server. What does it mean? Means it is listening to the local machine. Local, in this scenario, the local machine is our cluster name, which is SQL ADB, client access name. And when we put SQL ADB slash SQL AB FCI, it is not going to connect, because the owner node is SQL AB FCI, not the client access name. But in this scenario, the SQL named instance, okay, if you see here, the owner node is B, similar to our SQL instance, but the client access name is SQL BDB. Okay, now here is the tricky part. So whenever you try to connect to a default instance on this particular SQL ADB, okay, in the backend, what it does is, it will communicate to itself locally, and then it will try to connect without putting that slash. Even though if you try to put it, is not going to work, because it is listening to default instance, as I told. And for default instance, this is how you have to connect. But in the name instance column, we have to specifically put the client access name slash SQL BI. Okay, I mean to say SQL BNI. Okay, the one which we installed. So this is how it works, and that is the reason we are able to connect it here. Now I will try to show you that as well. Like if I just connect using the client access, the network name, okay, which is SQL BDB, and I hit connect, it will not connect, it will throw us error. So as I told earlier, now we'll try with IP as well. Let me try with IP as well, whether it is connecting. Once I put the IP, I will hit trust server certificate, administrative permission is there, I'll hit, and I'll hit connect. And once I hit connect, even this is not going to work. The reason is pretty much simple. So whenever you install a default instance, it will listen to the port 1443 by default. Okay, whenever you try to connect using the IP or named instance, it is not going to connect. Okay, for a named instance, for default instance, it is going to connect. Now to make this work, what we have to put is slash and then the instance name which we are going to connect with. In our case, it is sqlbi. Okay, and if I do this, it will connect here. Okay, and I will explain you. I'll open configuration and manager as well. Meanwhile, it is connecting. Let me look for configuration manager. I want to show you there as well how it works. So if I open SQL Server configuration manager, and you can see here the IP and named instance got connected now, and it is taking a time. Okay, so this is how it works when you try to connect with a named instance. And if I take you to SQL Server services, as you can see, we have created this named instance. That is the reason it is saying sqlbi. Now, when I try to add this particular node in our SQL failover cluster, SQL FCI node, the same name will be present here. That is the reason whenever we try to put that cluster name, client access name slash sqlbi, irrespective of VM name, it is going to connect to this named instance. Okay, but in default instance, as I told, when you try to connect, we can't use slash. The reason is it is listening to local host name, local machine name. So whenever the node changes, suppose if the node 1 goes down and node 2 is working, the name will change. Okay, in the backend the name will get changed. That is the reason it will not connect, and we should not use. That is the reason the architecture of SQL failover clustering functions that way. Okay, I hope you understood that, and let me add the cluster as well. This part is done. We are able to connect here in our sqlb machine, and I'm going to add this particular SQL newly installed SQL node to our SQL FCI. Okay, as a named instance cluster name. So let me minimize this and open my SQL AB FCI, and here as you can see it is present here. Let me minimize this and let me open this particular file explorer to get this SQL setup. Once I go here, I think so. Okay, it is not mounted. Let me mount this. So I'll hit this and hit mount. It will ask me permissions. Let me give that permissions. And here we have SSMS installed. Let me install the setup file. So in our previous video, I have created two different documents. One creating the failover cluster installation in the first node, and then install in the second node, because we were having a lot of explanation there. But in this video, we are not going to have any sort of explanation, because already you have saw that in previous video. So this is just an additional video which I'm showing you if you want to use named instance. Okay, so the setup has started. Click on installation, and we have to add this particular node to our freshly installed named instance cluster. Okay, add node to SQL Server cluster. The failover cluster node installation has been started. Let me, okay, I don't want product update installation setup file. Let us wait until this completes. It is running the check in progress. I'm in rule check in progress. Let us complete this, and then everything is passed. And as I told, if you have any error, it will not show you next button. So you should make sure that you are going to fix that. But in my scenario, I don't have any error. So I'll hit next, and we'll proceed further with the installation part. As you can see here, let us wait. This part is done. The addition will be developer. I'm not going to change anything, because developer edition will give you all the facilities of enterprise edition. Okay, but we should not use in production as Microsoft recommendation, because I have been working with Microsoft and supporting for the same project. So that is the reason. So once this is done, I accept terms and condition, hit next, and I think so until here everything is same. And now if you see here the SQL Server named instance, it is by default selected sqlbi. Okay, we can't change anything here, as I told here, because we are going to add this particular SQL AB FCI machine to our SQLB named instance cluster. That is the reason we are not able to add anything here. And it automatically, the failover cluster is smart enough to understand that. Now you will be having one more question, why we are not able to see this Microsoft SQL Server. The first time we did installation, why we are only seeing this particular sqlbi, which is our named instance. The reason is, if you remember in our previous video, the SQL A was named instance, and we made this SQL AB FCI as a node to that cluster, so that if failure happens, this will take care. Okay, so already this node is added. That is the reason we are not able to see here. And if you see here node SQL AB FCI, if it is not added, then you will get an option to change here. But as I told, it is already added. That is the reason we are not seeing here. And in this SQL AB NI, you can see only SQL B is there. That is the reason it automatically detected that. Okay, so leave everything default. Okay, and hit next to complete the installation. Let's wait. I think so. It will ask, it will show me the IP. Okay, let's hit next, and it will ask me for password. I think so. I check this. Okay, let me check this. Oh, sorry about that. Let me hit next and the grand volume, and then as I told, we have to give the password. So let's run the check. Everything looks pretty good. And if you want to make any changes, you can go back and do it. But in my scenario, everything looks good. I'm making sqlbi named instance on my client access, which is Windows failover cluster on a SQL cluster. Let's hit install. And once the installation is complete, I'll come back and I will show you how this works, and we'll also see how whether this is functioning properly or not by manually turning off one of the VMs. And also, if you want, I will move the nodes as well from node SQL ABFCI to B, and we'll check that as well whether it is working or not by connecting from SSMS. Okay, so once the installation is complete, I will come back and I'll show you. Meanwhile, let me open the SQL failover cluster. I think so there is something wrong. Okay, let me install. Once the installation everything is done for both the things, I'll come back and I'll start the video. We are back and the installation is complete. Let me, as you can see here, this particular node has been added to the cluster, named instance cluster. Let me close this as well, and let me open the failover cluster, and currently this is running. Let me open SSMS and try to connect. So this is our default instance. Let me connect to my named instance, I mean to say, and I'll do drop down, browse for more. Let's see whether it is visible or not. If it is not visible, then there is some sort of network problem. Okay, it is here. So I'll hit OK, trust your certificate, and connect. As you can see, now we have that. Okay, and currently now I'm able to connect from SQL ABFC as well. Obviously we can connect because they are part of from same network, I mean to say same subnet network. And currently you can see that our named instance is holding SQL. The owner node for this is sqlbi. Let me open configuration manager and I'll quickly show you. Okay, the manual failure, and also I will try to move the owner node from here as well. Both will test it. So as you can see, I have opened my SQL Server Services in my SQL AFCI cluster, and you can see the named instance is stopped. Okay, this is the named instance, it is stopped. Now what I will do is I will right click on this. Okay, as you can see here, I'll right click and I will do move. Okay, once you hit that, best possible, I don't want to do that, select node, and as you told, currently it is B, and I will move this to SQL ABFCI, and I will hit OK. So once I do that, it will take some time, couple of seconds, and it will move to SQL ABFCI, as you can see here. Currently it is running, up and running, and as you can see, the owner node is SQL ABFCI. Now if I go back to configuration manager and refresh this, you will see that our named instance is running. Can you see here? So this is how it works. Okay, now when I try to connect or refresh here, as you can see, currently it is not coming. Let me refresh and you can see I'm able to connect here. Okay, this part is done. Now let's do the failover. Okay, so what I will do is I will manually turn off this machine or restart anything. Okay, let me shut down. Okay, once I shut down this SQL AB, now the agenda is it should move to our SQL B. Let me log into SQL B. This is our SQL B. And okay, let me close this. Sorry about that. So currently you can see it went to stop state and now it is moving to SQL B. It has already initiated and it is taking time to move here. Let's see when it is going to move, and we'll see whether we are able to connect to this cluster or not. As you can see, it is moved. Let me go back to SSMS, and currently, okay, this is the one. Let me refresh this and let's see whether it is working or not. As you can see, now it is working perfectly fine. Okay, so this is how we have tested the SQL named instance, and also the name the default instance, both how it works, what are the installations. So as I told, this is the additional step which generally people will do or we are going to do. But if you want to install both in a SIEM, the SSAS as well we can do, which we are going to see in our next video. I hope you like this video and enjoy this video. I hope now you are completely clear with the SQL failover cluster installation. As I told, you can watch our article. I meant to say watch the complete series and the article which is present over here. I have guided with each step on how to do. These are complete 13 steps, and I will be adding one more 2 articles as well, how to add a SSCS cluster on a named instance, and we'll see that in our next upcoming videos. Okay, if you have any doubts or suggestions for me, please feel free to comment down below, or you can comment on my website as well. Okay, if you go here and leave a comment, leave a reply, If there is some sort of problem or something you're facing, please let me know. If you have other ways to do it, please let me know. Even I'll try to make videos on that. We'll see you in next upcoming videos with our SQL BI or Microsoft, product services in our upcoming videos. Please hit that bell icon and subscribe to my channel to get the latest update on the video which I post on this particular channel.